Behind the ornate walls of Vatican City lies a world of shadows, ancient mysteries, and secrets that have been carefully guarded for centuries. Today, we're going to explore the most terrifying secrets the Vatican is hiding from us. From forbidden books of black magic to extraterrestrial encounters, from mysterious deaths to ancient pagan symbols hidden in plain sight. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about one of the world's most secretive institutions. Before we begin, let me know where you are in the world and what time is it right now. If my suspicions are correct, we're all part of something much bigger than we realize. And this exact moment is the key to proving it. Now, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and let us guide you through the Vatican's hidden mysteries as you drift peacefully into sleep. The Vatican's Secret Archives, a labyrinth of hidden knowledge. Deep beneath the Vatican lies one of the world's most restricted libraries, the Vatican Apostolic Archive, formerly known as the Secret Archive. This underground fortress contains over 50 miles of shelves stretching across 200 years of human history. With millions of documents spanning from the 8th century to the present day, access is severely limited to only a handful of scholars each year. The archive's contents remain largely mysterious. Letters from world leaders, theological texts that shaped Christianity, and political correspondence that influenced the course of history lie dormant in climate-controlled vaults. But perhaps most intriguingly, rumours persist of documents describing extraterrestrial encounters, unexplained phenomena, and technologies that defy our current understanding of science. The Vatican maintains strict control over what can be studied or disclosed, with many documents remaining classified for decades or even centuries. The slow digitization process means that countless secrets may never see the light of day. What knowledge lies buried in these vaults? What truths about our history, our faith, and our place in the universe has the Vatican chosen to keep from humanity? The very existence of such a vast, secretive collection raises uncomfortable questions. In an age of transparency and information sharing, why does the Vatican maintain such tight control over historical documents? What could be so dangerous or revolutionary that it requires such extreme secrecy? Before we dive into the next hidden secret, we have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month so we can keep bringing you these deep dives into history's mysteries. If you're loving this journey into the unknown, would you help us out with a quick like and subscribe? It's completely free and means the world to us. Thank you. Now let's uncover the next secret, the forbidden black magic book, the Grand Grimoire. Hidden somewhere within the Vatican's most secure vaults allegedly lies one of the most dangerous books ever written, the Grand Grimoire, also known as the Red Dragon. This ancient tome supposedly contains detailed instructions for summoning demons, including rituals that invoke the name of Lucifer himself. The book is said to be so powerful and dangerous that even possessing it is considered a grave sin. According to legend, the Grand Grimoire was written in the 16th century and contains not only demonic summoning rituals, but also instructions for making pacts with dark entities. The text allegedly describes how to gain supernatural powers, acquire wealth through supernatural means, and command legions of demons. The book is divided into sections, each dealing with different aspects of dark magic, from basic conjurations to the most complex and dangerous rituals. The Vatican's alleged possession of this book raises disturbing questions about the Church's relationship with the occult. If such a book exists within the Vatican's walls, why would they keep it? Some theorists suggest that the Church maintains the book for study purposes, understanding the enemy they claim to fight against. Others propose a more sinister theory, that elements within the Vatican have used the book's knowledge for their own purposes. The Grand Grimoire's reputation is so fearsome that even mentioning its existence is taboo in many religious circles. Medieval accounts describe the book as being bound in human skin and written in blood, though these claims remain unverified. The Vatican has never officially confirmed or denied possessing the book, maintaining their characteristic silence on matters of the occult. What makes this mystery even more chilling is the historical context. The Catholic Church has long been associated with exorcisms and battles against demonic forces. If they possess such a powerful tool of darkness. What does this say about the true nature of spiritual warfare? UFO and the Vatican, extraterrestrial encounters. In one of the most shocking revelations of recent years, former intelligence officer David Grouch made explosive claims about the Vatican's involvement with extraterrestrial phenomena. According to Grouch, the Vatican has been hiding the remains of a UFO that crashed in Italy before World War II, along with what he describes as non-human biologics. The incident allegedly occurred in the late 1930s when a craft of unknown origin crashed in the Italian countryside. Pope Pius IV, who would later become one of the most controversial figures in Vatican history, allegedly informed the US government about the crash. This led to a secret retrieval operation that saw American forces working with Vatican officials to recover and study the crashed vessel. What makes this account particularly compelling is the timing. The late 1930s marked a period of intense technological advancement and growing global tensions. If extraterrestrial technology fell into human hands during this critical period, it could have dramatically altered the course of history. The implications are staggering. Did recovered alien technology contribute to the rapid advancement of human technology during and after World War II? The Vatican's alleged involvement raises profound theological questions. How would the discovery of extraterrestrial life impact the Catholic Church's teachings about humanity's unique place in God's creation? Some theorists suggest that the Church has been preparing for such a revelation, gradually introducing the concept of life beyond Earth through astronomical research and theological discussions. The Grouch revelations have never been officially confirmed by the Vatican, which maintains its standard policy of neither confirming nor denying such claims. However, the specificity of the allegations and the credibility of the source have sent shockwaves through both the UFO research community and religious scholars worldwide. The Vatican's time machine, witnessing the Crucifixion. Perhaps no Vatican secret is more mind-bending than the alleged existence of a time machine. In the 1960s, Father Pelgro Ernetti, a respected Benedictine monk and scientist, claimed to have built a device called the chronovisor, a machine capable of viewing events from the past. According to Ernetti, he didn't just build this device, he used it to witness and photograph Jesus Christ's crucifixion. Ernetti described the chronovisor as a complex machine that could tune into the electromagnetic radiation left behind by past events. He claimed that all human actions leave traces in the form of energy that can be detected and visualized with the right technology. Working with a team of 12 scientists, including Nobel Prize winner Enrico Fermi, Ernetti allegedly perfected this technology in secret. The implications of such a device are staggering. If the chronovisor truly existed and worked as described, it would represent the most revolutionary scientific breakthrough in human history. The ability to observe past events would fundamentally change our understanding of history, archaeology, and even theology. Every historical mystery could potentially be solved, every religious claim verified or debunked. Ernetti claimed to have witnessed not only the crucifixion, but also the Last Supper, scenes from ancient Rome, and even prehistoric events. He described seeing Jesus as a tall, imposing figure with a face that radiated both strength and compassion. However, despite these extraordinary claims, Ernetti never provided any concrete evidence of his machine's existence or capabilities. The Vatican's response to Ernetti's claims has been characteristically ambiguous. They neither confirmed nor denied the existence of the chronovisor, instead maintaining that such matters were beyond their purview. This silence has only fueled speculation about what the Vatican might be hiding in their deepest vaults. The City of the Dead, ancient secrets underground. 5 levels beneath the magnificent St. Peter's Basilica lies a hidden city of the dead that few have ever seen. The Vatican necropolis, also known as the Scavi, represents one of the most important archaeological sites in the Christian world, containing layers of history that span over 2 millennia. The necropolis contains 1st century Roman pagan tombs that predate Christianity's arrival in Rome. These burial chambers, with their intricate frescoes and mosaics, provide a window into the religious practices and beliefs of ancient Rome. The artwork depicts scenes of Roman mythology, daily life, and spiritual beliefs that would later clash with Christian doctrine. As archaeologists dig deeper, they discover Christian burial sites from the 5th century, showing the gradual transition from pagan to Christian Rome. The juxtaposition of pagan and Christian imagery in these underground chambers tells the story of a religious revolution that would reshape the world. Some tombs contain hybrid symbols that blend Christian and pagan elements, suggesting that the transition was not as clear-cut as historical accounts suggest. Perhaps most significantly, the necropolis is believed to contain the remains of St. Peter himself. In 1939, workers discovered what they believed to be Peter's tomb beneath the high altar of St. Peter's Basilica. The discovery of bone fragments and the inscription, "Peter is here," sent shockwaves through the Catholic world. However, the Vatican has never allowed independent scientific verification of these remains, leaving their authenticity a matter of faith rather than fact. The underground city also contains a complete medieval church that was buried when the current basilica was constructed. This hidden church, with its own altar and religious artifacts, represents a lost chapter in Vatican history. What secrets might this buried church contain? What religious practices or beliefs were literally buried beneath the new construction? The mysterious death of Pope John Paul I, a papal murder. One of the Vatican's darkest secrets involves the mysterious death of Pope John Paul I after just 33 days in office. Albino Luciani, who took the papal name John Paul I, died suddenly on September 28, 1978, under circumstances that remain controversial to this day. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but numerous inconsistencies in the Vatican's account have fueled decades of speculation. The Vatican initially claimed that the Pope was found dead by his secretary, but later admitted that he was discovered by a nun. The time of death was changed multiple times, and most suspiciously, no autopsy was performed, despite the sudden nature of his death. John Paul I had been investigating serious financial scandals involving the Vatican Bank. He had uncovered evidence of money laundering, connections to the mafia, and suspicious financial dealings that reached the highest levels of the Vatican hierarchy. The Pope had prepared a list of Vatican officials he planned to remove from their positions, including powerful figures who had been implicated in the scandals. The mysterious circumstances surrounding his death become even more suspicious when connected to other deaths in the Vatican's orbit. Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker due to his close ties with the Vatican, was found hanging under London's Blackfriars Bridge in 1982. Calvi had been deeply involved in Vatican financial affairs and was allegedly prepared to expose the full extent of the Church's financial corruption. The secretive P2 Masonic Lodge, which had infiltrated the highest levels of Italian society, including the Vatican, was also connected to both deaths. This shadow organisation had been using the Vatican Bank for illegal financial operations, and both John Paul I and Calvi posed threats to their activities. The Vatican's refusal to allow an autopsy and their inconsistent explanations have only deepened the mystery. Why would the Church, which usually follows strict protocols for papal deaths, deviate so dramatically from standard procedures? What were they trying to hide? The Egyptian obelisk at the heart of the Vatican, pagan symbols in sacred space. Standing at the centre of St. Peter's Square, a 3,000-year-old Egyptian obelisk serves as a silent witness to one of history's most profound ironies. This massive stone monument, dedicated to ancient Egyptian sun worship, now occupies the heart of the Christian world's most sacred space. The obelisk originally stood in the ancient Egyptian city of Heliopolis, where it was dedicated to the sun god Ra. Emperor Caligula transported it to Rome in 37 AD, where it was placed in the Circus of Nero, the very location where countless Christians were martyred for their faith. For decades, this pagan symbol loomed over the site where followers of Christ were fed to lions, crucified, and burned alive as human torches. In 1586, Pope Sixtus V ordered the massive monument to be moved to the centre of St. Peter's Square, a project that required incredible engineering prowess and took months to complete. The moving of the obelisk was considered such a monumental achievement that the Pope threatened excommunication for anyone who spoke during the delicate operation. But why would the Vatican choose to place a pagan symbol at the very heart of Christendom? The official explanation is that the obelisk serves as a trophy of Christianity's victory over paganism. However, some researchers suggest a more complex relationship between Christian and pagan traditions, pointing to the many pagan symbols that have been incorporated into Christian iconography. The obelisk's hieroglyphic inscriptions praise the pharaoh Rameses II and invoke the power of Ra, the sun god. These ancient prayers to a pagan deity now stand just meters away from the Pope's window, creating a surreal juxtaposition of competing religious traditions. The monument has witnessed nearly 2 millennia of Christian history, from the martyrdom of early Christians to the papal ceremonies of the modern era. What makes this even more intriguing is the obelisk's connection to ancient mystery religions and esoteric knowledge. Obelisks were not merely decorative monuments, but were believed to be conduits for spiritual energy, connecting earth to heaven. Their placement was considered sacred, requiring careful consideration of astronomical alignments and spiritual significance. St. Peter's Bones, Faith over Science. In 2013, the Vatican made a historic decision that sent shockwaves through both religious and scientific communities. For the first time in history, bone fragments claimed to be the remains of St. Peter were displayed publicly during a papal ceremony. However, the Vatican's handling of these sacred relics raises profound questions about the intersection of faith and science. The bone fragments were discovered in 1939 during excavations beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Workers found what appeared to be an ancient tomb with an inscription reading, "Peter is here." Inside a marble-lined repository, they discovered fragments of bone that were immediately claimed to be the remains of Christianity's first pope. The discovery was hailed as one of the most important archaeological finds in Christian history. However, the Vatican's approach to these remains has been anything but scientific. Despite numerous requests from independent researchers and archaeologists, the Church has never allowed comprehensive scientific testing of the bones. Carbon dating, DNA analysis, and other modern forensic techniques that could potentially verify the age and origin of the remains have been systematically denied. In 1968, Pope Paul VI announced that the bones had been identified in a way that we can consider convincing, but he admitted that this identification was based on faith rather than scientific evidence. The Vatican's position remains that the spiritual significance of the relic supersedes any need for scientific verification. This approach raises uncomfortable questions about the Vatican's relationship with truth and evidence. If the bones are indeed those of St. Peter, scientific testing would only confirm their authenticity and strengthen the Church's claims. The refusal to submit the relics to scientific scrutiny suggests either a lack of confidence in their authenticity or a philosophical rejection of empirical evidence. The controversy deepens when considering the historical context. St. Peter was allegedly crucified in Rome around 64 AD, and his body was supposedly buried in a simple grave on Vatican Hill. The circumstances of his death and burial make it unlikely that his remains would have been preserved in identifiable form for nearly 2 millennia. The Pope prisoners, captivity within sacred walls. For nearly 60 years, the Pope lived as a prisoner within the Vatican walls, creating one of the most bizarre situations in religious history. This extraordinary period of papal captivity began in 1871, when the newly unified Kingdom of Italy seized the Papal States, stripping the Pope of his temporal power and confining him to the Vatican. The situation arose from the complex political landscape of 19th century Italy. For over 1,000 years, the Pope had been both a spiritual leader and a temporal ruler, controlling vast territories across central Italy known as the Papal States. These territories provided the Church with enormous wealth and political influence, making the Pope one of Europe's most powerful monarchs. When Italian nationalists, led by figures like Giuseppe Garibaldi, began their campaign to unify Italy, the Papal States became a major obstacle. The Pope's temporal power was seen as an impediment to Italian unity and progress. In 1870, Italian forces captured Rome, and incorporated the Papal States into the new Kingdom of Italy, effectively ending over a millennium of papal temporal rule. Pope Pius IX's response was dramatic and unprecedented. He declared himself a prisoner of the Vatican and established the Roman Question, a diplomatic crisis that would persist for decades. Subsequent popes maintained this position, refusing to leave the Vatican grounds and rejecting any recognition of Italian sovereignty over Rome. The papal captivity created a surreal situation where the spiritual leader of millions of Catholics worldwide was confined to just 109 acres of Vatican territory. The Pope could not leave his domain without implicitly recognizing Italian authority over Rome, something the Church refused to do. This self-imposed imprisonment became a powerful symbol of the Church's resistance to secular authority. The situation finally ended in 1929 with the signing of the Lateran Treaty between Pope Pius XI and Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. This agreement established Vatican City as an independent sovereign state, finally resolving the Roman Question and ending the papal captivity. The treaty recognized the Pope's temporal sovereignty over Vatican City while acknowledging Italian sovereignty over Rome. Jesus' death certificate, the Shroud of Turin. One of the Vatican's most controversial relics is the Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth that allegedly bears the imprint of Jesus Christ's crucified body. This 14-foot-long cloth has been called Jesus' death certificate by believers, but its authenticity remains one of the most debated mysteries in religious history. The shroud displays the faint image of a crucified man, complete with what appears to be wounds consistent with crucifixion. The image shows evidence of scourging, crown of thorns wounds, and what believers claim is the wound from a Roman spear. The level of detail in the image is extraordinary, showing anatomical accuracy that would have been difficult to fake using medieval techniques. In 1988, the Vatican allowed carbon dating tests on small samples of the shroud. The results were shocking. The tests indicated that the cloth dated to between 1260 and 1390 AD, suggesting it was a medieval creation rather than a first-century relic. This finding seemed to settle the debate, relegating the shroud to the status of a pious fraud. However, the story didn't end there. Barbara Frail, a researcher studying the shroud, claimed to have discovered ancient text embedded in the cloth's fibers. Using advanced imaging techniques, she alleged to have found Latin, Greek, and Aramaic inscriptions that would have been impossible for medieval forgers to create. These supposed inscriptions included references to Jesus of Nazareth and details of his crucifixion. The Vatican's response to the carbon dating results was notably measured. Rather than definitively declaring the shroud authentic or fraudulent, Church officials emphasized its spiritual significance over scientific verification. They positioned the shroud as an object of veneration, regardless of its historical authenticity, focusing on its power to inspire faith rather than its value as historical evidence. Critics of the carbon dating point to potential contamination of the samples and the possibility that the tested portions were from medieval repairs rather than the original cloth. They argue that the shroud's unique image formation process remains unexplained by modern science, suggesting that it may indeed be genuine. The Pope escaped tunnels, secret passages of power. Hidden beneath the streets of Rome lies a secret passage that has served as the Vatican's ultimate escape route for over a millennium. The Passetto di Borgo, an 800-metre tunnel connecting the Vatican to the fortress of Castel Sant'Angelo, represents one of the most ingenious security measures in papal history. Construction of this secret passage began in the 9th century and continued for over 6 centuries, creating a sophisticated underground network that allowed popes to flee the Vatican in times of danger. The tunnel is built entirely above ground, running along the top of medieval walls, but it was designed to be concealed from potential attackers and assassins. The passage proved its worth during one of the most dramatic episodes in papal history. In 1527, when the troops of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V sacked Rome, Pope Clement VII used the Passetto to escape the Vatican. As his Swiss guards died defending St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope fled through the secret tunnel to the safety of Castel Sant'Angelo, where he remained under siege for months. the tunnel's construction reveals the Vatican's long-standing paranoia about security and survival. The passage includes multiple hidden entrances, secret chambers, and defensive positions that could be used to fight off pursuers. The walls are thick enough to withstand cannon fire, and the tunnel includes provisions for extended sieges. What makes the Passetto particularly intriguing is its continued relevance in modern times. The tunnel has been maintained and updated throughout the centuries, suggesting that the Vatican still considers it a viable escape route. During World War II, there were rumours that the tunnel was prepared for use in case Nazi forces attempted to capture the Pope. The existence of such an elaborate escape system raises questions about what threats the Vatican has faced throughout history. The tunnel's construction suggests that papal paranoia about assassination attempts and military attacks was well-founded. It also reveals the extent to which the Vatican has been willing to go to protect its secrets and ensure the survival of its leadership. The true cross wood that changed the world. Among the Vatican's most sacred relics is a fragment of wood claimed to be from the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified. This piece of the true cross represents one of Christianity's most important physical connections to its foundational event, but its authenticity remains shrouded in mystery and controversy. According to legend, the true cross was discovered in 326 AD by Helena, mother of Emperor Constantine, during her pilgrimage to Jerusalem. She allegedly found 3 crosses buried near Golgotha and identified the true cross through a miraculous healing. The legend states that the cross was made from cedar, pine, and cypress wood, though this detail appears in various forms across different accounts. The problem with the true cross legend is the proliferation of claimed fragments throughout the Christian world. By the Middle Ages, so many churches claimed to possess pieces of the true cross that the total amount of wood would have been sufficient to build several crosses. This abundance of relics raised obvious questions about authenticity and led to widespread skepticism about the legitimacy of such claims. The Vatican's fragment of the true cross is kept in a specially designed reliquary and is only displayed on rare occasions. Like many of the Church's most sacred relics, it has never been subjected to independent scientific analysis. Carbon dating, wood analysis, and other modern techniques that could potentially verify the age and origin of the fragment have been systematically avoided. The Church's position on the true cross reflects its broader approach to relics, emphasizing spiritual significance over historical verification. Vatican officials argue that the power of the relic lies in its ability to inspire faith and devotion, regardless of its historical authenticity. This perspective places the true cross beyond the realm of scientific inquiry and into the domain of pure faith. However, the reluctance to submit the relic to scientific testing raises obvious questions. If the wood fragment is indeed from the cross of Christ, scientific analysis would only confirm its authenticity and strengthen the Church's claims. The avoidance of such testing suggests either uncertainty about the relic's authenticity or a philosophical rejection of empirical evidence in matters of faith. The Vatican and the Holocaust, silence in the face of evil. One of the most controversial chapters in Vatican history involves the Church's response to the Holocaust. The role of Pope Pius XII during World War II has been debated for decades, with critics arguing that his silence in the face of Nazi genocide amounted to complicity, while defenders claim he worked behind the scenes to save Jewish lives. The controversy centers on Pope Pius XII's decision to maintain official neutrality during the war, even as reports of mass murder reached the Vatican. Despite having extensive intelligence networks throughout Europe, the Pope never publicly condemned the Holocaust or spoke out against Nazi persecution of Jews. This silence has been interpreted by many as a moral failure of historic proportions. However, recent discoveries have complicated this narrative. In 2019, researchers uncovered evidence suggesting that Catholic institutions under Vatican direction hid approximately 300 Jews in Rome during the Nazi occupation. Convents, monasteries, and churches throughout the city secretly sheltered Jewish families, often at great risk to themselves and their communities. The discovery of this rescue network raises important questions about the Vatican's true role during the Holocaust. If the Church was actively saving Jewish lives, why did the Pope maintain public silence? Some historians argue that Pius XIII believed quiet diplomacy would be more effective than public condemnation, while others suggest he feared that speaking out would only make the situation worse for both Jews and Catholics. The debate becomes even more complex when considering the Vatican's motivations. Were these rescue efforts motivated by genuine compassion for Jewish suffering, or were they part of a broader strategy to convert Jews to Christianity? Some evidence suggests that the Vatican saw the war as an opportunity to bring Jewish refugees into the Catholic fold, raising uncomfortable questions about the Church's true intentions. The Vatican's post-war handling of Nazi war criminals has also drawn criticism. The Church helped many former SS officers and Nazi officials escape to South America through what became known as the Rat Lines. While the Vatican claimed these efforts were motivated by Christian mercy, critics argue that the Church showed more concern for Nazi perpetrators than for Jewish victims. The Ark of the Covenant, the lost treasure of Solomon, hidden somewhere in the Vatican's deepest vaults, may lie the most precious relic in Jewish and Christian history. The Ark of the Covenant, this sacred chest which allegedly contained the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, disappeared during the Babylonian invasion of Jerusalem in 587 BC and has never been definitively located. The Ark of the Covenant represents far more than a simple container. According to biblical accounts, it was the physical manifestation of God's presence on earth, capable of performing miracles and striking down those who touched it improperly. The detailed descriptions in the book of Exodus describe an elaborate golden chest adorned with cherubim and carried by specially consecrated priests. The mystery of the Ark's disappearance has spawned countless theories and expeditions. Some believe it was hidden in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, while others suggest it was carried to Ethiopia by the Queen of Sheba. However, one of the most intriguing theories places the Ark in the Vatican's possession. This theory gains credibility when considering the Vatican's historical practice of acquiring and preserving important religious artifacts. The Church has systematically collected relics from throughout the Christian world, often through conquest, purchase, or donation. If the Ark had survived the Babylonian destruction, it's plausible that it could have eventually made its way to Rome. Archaeological evidence provides some support for this theory. The Ark's design bears striking similarities to Egyptian ceremonial boxes and religious artifacts, suggesting that it was influenced by Egyptian religious practices. The Vatican's extensive collection of Egyptian artifacts, including the Obelisk in St. Peter's Square, demonstrates a long-standing interest in Egyptian religious objects. The Vatican's characteristic secrecy about its relic collection makes it impossible to verify whether the Ark is among its treasures. The Church has never publicly acknowledged possessing the Ark, but it has also never denied such claims. This silence, combined with the Vatican's known practice of keeping its most sacred relics hidden from public view, leaves the possibility tantalizingly open. The fake mummy scandal at the Vatican, deception in sacred halls. In 2015, the Vatican faced an embarrassing revelation that exposed the extent to which even the Church could be deceived by fraudulent relics. Advanced scanning technology revealed that some of the Vatican's prized mummies were actually 19th century fakes, created during a period of mummy mania when demand for Egyptian artifacts far exceeded supply. The scandal emerged when researchers used CT scans to examine several mummies in the Vatican's collection. Instead of finding ancient Egyptian remains, they discovered that some of the mummies contained medieval human bones wrapped in old linen. The fraud was sophisticated enough to fool Vatican experts for over a century, demonstrating the skill of 19th century forgers. The fake mummies were created during a period when Egyptian artifacts were in high demand throughout Europe. The opening of Egypt to Western exploration in the 19th century had created a fascination with all things Egyptian, and wealthy collectors were willing to pay enormous sums for authentic mummies. This demand created a lucrative market for forgeries. The Vatican's acquisition of these fake mummies appears to have been innocent. Church officials were unknowingly deceived by skilled forgers rather than deliberately participating in fraud. However, the scandal raised uncomfortable questions about the Vatican's acquisition practices and the authenticity of other artifacts in their collection. The discovery of fake mummies also highlights the challenges faced by any institution trying to preserve and authenticate ancient artifacts. Even with extensive expertise and resources, the Vatican was unable to detect sophisticated forgeries. This revelation has led to increased scrutiny of other Vatican relics and artifacts. The scandal has prompted the Vatican to reassess its collection and implement more rigorous authentication procedures. Modern scientific techniques are now being used to verify the authenticity of artifacts, though the Church continues to restrict access to its most sacred relics. Emperor Nero's bathtub, luxury amid sacred halls. Hidden within the Vatican museums is an artifact that represents one of the most striking contrasts in the collection: Emperor Nero's bathtub. This massive basin, carved from rare Egyptian purple porphyry stone, serves as a tangible link to one of history's most notorious rulers and Christianity's most feared persecutor. The bathtub is a masterpiece of Roman engineering and artistry. Carved from a single block of porphyry, a stone so rare and difficult to work that it was reserved for emperors, the bathtub would be worth an estimated $2 billion in today's market. The deep purple colour of the stone was considered sacred in ancient Rome, symbolising imperial power and divine authority. Nero's relationship with early Christianity was catastrophic. He blamed Christians for the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD and launched the first systematic persecution of the new religion. Christians were crucified, fed to wild animals, and used as human torches to illuminate Nero's gardens. The apostles Peter and Paul were both martyred during Nero's reign, making his bathtub a symbol of Christian suffering and persecution. The irony of housing Nero's bathtub in the Vatican is profound. The very institution that emerged from the ashes of Nero's persecution now preserves the luxury items of their greatest enemy. The bathtub sits in the same city where Nero once tortured and killed Christians, now surrounded by the symbols and artifacts of Christianity's ultimate triumph. The bathtub's presence in the Vatican also raises questions about the Church's relationship with imperial power and luxury. While early Christianity preached poverty and simplicity, the modern Vatican houses one of the world's most expensive bathtubs. This juxtaposition reflects the complex evolution of Christianity from a persecuted minority to a powerful institution. The acquisition of Nero's bathtub represents the Vatican's broader practice of collecting artifacts from throughout history, regardless of their original purpose or the character of their owners. The Church has systematically preserved items from a pagan Rome, medieval Europe, and beyond, creating a collection that tells the story of human civilization through the lens of religious history. The Altar of Moses, ancient covenant in desert stone. Deep in the Saudi Arabian desert, at a site called Jabal al-Lawz, archaeologists have discovered what may be the most significant biblical archaeological find in modern history, an altar that matches the biblical description of the altar built by Moses. This L-shaped stone structure, found alongside 12 stone pillars, ash deposits, and animal bones, has sparked intense debate about its connection to the Vatican's collection of biblical artifacts. The altar at Jabal al-Lawz appears to match the biblical description from Exodus 24:4, where Moses built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. The archaeological evidence includes not only the altar and pillars, but also evidence of ancient burnt offerings, including ash deposits and animal bones that suggest ritual sacrifice. The site's location in Saudi Arabia challenges traditional theories about the route of the Exodus and the location of Mount Sinai. If this is indeed Moses' altar, it would place the biblical Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia rather than Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, fundamentally changing our understanding of one of the Bible's most important events. The the Saudi government has been reluctant to allow extensive archaeological investigation of the site, citing security concerns and disputing any biblical connections. This restriction has limited scientific study of the altar and prevented definitive confirmation of its biblical significance. However, the physical evidence that has been documented strongly suggests a connection to ancient Israelite religious practices. The Vatican's interest in this discovery is significant. If the altar is authentic, it would represent one of the most important biblical archaeological finds ever made. The Church has a long history of collecting and preserving biblical artifacts, and the Altar of Moses would be an unparalleled addition to their collection. The discovery also raises questions about the Vatican's relationship with biblical archaeology. The Church has sometimes been accused of suppressing archaeological discoveries that contradict traditional religious teachings. If the Altar of Moses is authentic, it would confirm biblical accounts, but challenge traditional geographical interpretations of the Exodus story. The fallen popes, corruption within sacred walls. The Vatican's history is marked by a disturbing pattern of papal deaths under mysterious circumstances. Of the 286 popes who have led the Catholic Church, 42 have died under circumstances that suggest murder, assassination, or deliberate harm. This shocking statistic reveals a dark underbelly of Vatican history that the Church has worked to obscure for centuries. The most bizarre example of papal corruption occurred in 897 AD with the Cadaver Synod, when Pope Stephen VI put the corpse of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, on trial. The decomposing body was dressed in papal robes and placed on a throne, while Stephen VI screamed accusations at the corpse. The dead pope was found guilty of various crimes, his papal acts were declared invalid, and his body was thrown into the Tiber River. Many papal deaths throughout history have been attributed to poison, stabbing, or other violent means. Pope John VIII was allegedly poisoned and then beaten to death with a hammer in 882 AD. Pope Benedict VI was strangled by supporters of a rival claimant to the papacy in 974 AD. Pope John XII was allegedly killed by the husband of a woman with whom he was having an affair. The period known as the Pornocracy, or rule of the harlots, in the 10th century, saw the papacy controlled by powerful Roman families who used murder and corruption to place their candidates on the papal throne. During this period, popes were routinely murdered, and the office became a tool of political power rather than spiritual leadership. Even in more recent centuries, mysterious papal deaths have continued. Pope Clement XIV, who dissolved the Jesuit order in 1773, died under suspicious circumstances that many attributed to Jesuit revenge. Pope Pius VIII's sudden death in 1830 was rumoured to be the result of poisoning by political enemies. The pattern of papal deaths reveals the extent to which the Vatican has been plagued by corruption, political intrigue, and violence throughout its history. These deaths were often the result of power struggles within the Church, conflicts with secular authorities, or revenge for controversial papal decisions. Homosexuality in the Vatican, Hidden Lives Behind Sacred Vows. In 2019, a shocking book titled In the Closet of the Vatican made explosive claims about the sexual orientation of Vatican clergy. Author Frederick Martel, based on 4 years of investigation and over 1,500 interviews, claimed that approximately 80% of Vatican clergy are homosexual, living secret lives that contradict the Church's public teachings. Martel's investigation revealed a culture of hypocrisy within the Vatican's walls, where public condemnation of homosexuality coexists with widespread homosexual activity among the clergy. The book describes a complex system of codes, secret meetings, and hidden relationships that allow Vatican officials to maintain their public image while pursuing private lives that directly contradict Church doctrine. The implications of these revelations are staggering. If accurate, they suggest that the Vatican's vocal opposition to homosexuality is maintained by an institution largely composed of homosexual men. This contradiction raises profound questions about the sincerity of Vatican teachings and the psychological toll of enforced celibacy and sexual repression. The book describes how this culture of secrecy creates vulnerability to blackmail, and corruption. Vatican officials living double lives become susceptible to pressure from those who know their secrets, potentially compromising their ability to make independent decisions. This dynamic may explain some of the Vatican's most controversial decisions and policies. The Vatican's response to these allegations has been notably muted. Rather than issuing strong denials or demanding evidence, church officials have largely remained silent about the book's claims. This silence has been interpreted by many as tacit confirmation of the book's allegations, though the Vatican maintains that it does not comment on such matters. The culture described in Martel's book extends beyond simple hypocrisy to encompass a complex world of Vatican politics, career advancement, and personal relationships. The author describes how sexual orientation and relationships influence appointments, policy decisions, and the internal power structure of the Church. The Phantom Time Hypothesis. Did the Vatican fabricate 300 years of history? One of the most extraordinary theories about Vatican deception involves the alleged fabrication of 3 centuries of human history. The Phantom Time Hypothesis, proposed by German historian Herbert Illig in the 1990s, suggests that the years 614-911 AD never actually occurred and were invented by the Vatican in collaboration with the Holy Roman Empire. According to Illig's theory, the fabrication was orchestrated by Pope Sylvester II, Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, and Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII in the late 10th century. Their alleged motive was to position themselves at the prestigious year 1000 AD, which had significant religious and political importance in medieval Christian thought. The theory is based on several pieces of circumstantial evidence, including discrepancies in calendar systems, the scarcity of archaeological evidence from the supposed Phantom period, and the lack of reliable historical records from these centuries. Illig points to the fact that the Gregorian calendar reform in 1582 removed only 10 days, when it should have removed 13 days if the Julian calendar had been in use since its introduction. Archaeological evidence from the Phantom period is notably sparse compared to the periods immediately before and after. Many monuments and artifacts that supposedly date to this period show stylistic inconsistencies that suggest they may have been created at different times than traditionally believed. The construction techniques and artistic styles often appear to jump abruptly from 7th century to 10th century standards, without the gradual evolution typically seen in historical development. The implications of the Phantom Time Hypothesis are mind-boggling. If true, it would mean that the Vatican has been perpetrating the greatest historical fraud in human history for over a millennium. Figures like Charlemagne, who supposedly lived during the Phantom period, would be fictional characters created to fill the fabricated timeline. Mainstream historians have largely rejected Illig's theory, pointing to astronomical evidence, dendrochronology, and carbon dating that supports the traditional timeline. However, the theory continues to attract attention because it highlights the extent to which our understanding of history depends on documents and records that could potentially be falsified. The missing books of the Bible, suppressed sacred texts. Between 1611 and 1684, 14 books were quietly removed from the Bible, erasing centuries of religious tradition and potentially hiding important spiritual teachings. These books, known as the Apocrypha, included texts like Esdras, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, and Maccabees, which had been considered sacred scripture for over 1,000 years. The removal of these books represents one of the most significant editorial decisions in religious history. Yet no clear explanation has ever been provided for why they were deemed unfit for inclusion in the Bible. The books contain stories, teachings, and prophecies that provide additional context for understanding early Christian and Jewish thought, but they also contain ideas that may have been considered threatening to established church doctrine. The Book of Enoch, for example, contains detailed descriptions of fallen angels, advanced technology, and pre-flood civilizations that some scholars believe were removed because they contradicted the Church's preferred narrative about human history. The text describes watchers who taught humans forbidden knowledge about astronomy, metallurgy, and other advanced sciences. The Gospel of Thomas, another excluded text, contains sayings attributed to Jesus that emphasize direct spiritual experience over institutional religious authority. These teachings suggest that individuals can achieve divine knowledge without the mediation of priests or church hierarchy, a concept that would have been threatening to the Vatican's power structure. Even more controversial is the evidence that the name Jesus itself may have been changed from the original Yeshua or Yahshua during the translation process. This alteration, if intentional, would represent a fundamental manipulation of Christianity's most sacred texts, changing the very name of the religion's founder. The Vatican's role in these editorial decisions remains unclear, but the Church's influence over biblical scholarship and translation has been enormous throughout history. The decision to exclude certain books while including others has shaped Christian theology for centuries, potentially hiding important spiritual truths from billions of believers. The influence of extraterrestrials, ancient astronaut evidence. In the 1920s, a mysterious figure named Genrich Ludwig made extraordinary claims about gaining access to the Vatican's secret archives and discovering evidence of extraterrestrial contact with ancient civilizations. According to Ludwig, the Vatican possesses texts describing non-human beings who helped develop human civilization and provided advanced technology to ancient peoples. Ludwig's account describes documents that detail interactions between humans and beings from other worlds, including descriptions of advanced weapons, flying vehicles, and technologies that would have been impossible for ancient civilizations to develop independently. These texts allegedly describe how these extraterrestrial visitors influenced the development of human religion, science, and culture. The alleged Vatican documents described beings who were worshipped as gods by ancient peoples but were actually visitors from other planets. These beings supposedly taught humans agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and other advanced sciences, explaining the rapid advancement of human civilization that occurred in various parts of the world simultaneously. What makes Ludwig's claims particularly intriguing is their consistency with other ancient astronaut theories and archaeological anomalies found throughout the world. Ancient texts from various cultures describe beings who came from the sky, possessed advanced technology, and influenced human development. The similarities between these accounts suggest either a common source or shared historical experiences. The Vatican's alleged possession of such documents would explain the Church's recent openness to the possibility of extraterrestrial life. In recent decades, Vatican astronomers have made statements suggesting that the discovery of alien life would not contradict Catholic doctrine, a position that seems to prepare the faithful for potential revelations about extraterrestrial contact. However, Ludwig's claims remain unverified, and no physical evidence has ever been presented to support his allegations. The Vatican has never confirmed or denied possessing such documents, maintaining their characteristic silence on matters that could challenge traditional religious teachings. Confronting the devil, spiritual warfare in the Vatican. Father Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist for over 30 years, performed more than 70,000 exorcisms and claimed that demonic forces had infiltrated the highest levels of the Catholic Church. His allegations about supernatural warfare within the Vatican reveal a hidden world of spiritual battle that most Catholics never see. Amorth's claims were not limited to individual cases of possession, but extended to what he described as systematic demonic infiltration of the Vatican itself. He believed that evil forces were actively working to corrupt and destroy the Church from within, using human agents to accomplish their goals. According to Amorth, this spiritual warfare manifested in various ways, from personal attacks on church officials to broader corruption and scandal. The exorcist pointed to specific incidents as evidence of demonic activity targeting the Vatican. He claimed that the 1981 assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II was orchestrated by supernatural evil forces, not merely human conspirators. Similarly, he attributed various incidents during Pope Benedict XVI's papacy between 2008 and 2009 to demonic interference in Vatican affairs. Amorth's worldview encompassed a literal interpretation of good versus evil, where demons were not metaphorical representations of human weakness, but actual entities capable of possessing and controlling individuals. He believed that the Vatican was a primary target for such entities because of its central role in Christianity and its potential to influence billions of believers worldwide. The implications of Amorth's claims are staggering. If accurate, they suggest that the Vatican is not merely a human institution struggling with ordinary corruption and political intrigue, but a battlefield in a cosmic war between good and evil. This perspective frames Vatican scandals and controversies not as institutional failures, but as manifestations of supernatural conflict. Amorth's work also revealed the extent to which belief in demonic possession remains alive within the Catholic Church. Despite scientific explanations for many phenomena traditionally attributed to demonic activity, the Church continues to train exorcists and perform rituals designed to combat supernatural evil. Unidentified flying object over the Vatican, modern mysteries. In June 2007, multiple witnesses reported seeing a mysterious silver-orange disc hovering over St. Peter's Basilica in broad daylight. The sighting, captured on video and witnessed by tourists and locals alike, represents one of the most well-documented UFO incidents in Vatican history. Yet it quickly disappeared from mainstream media coverage. The object appeared to be metallic and disc-shaped, moving in ways that defied conventional aircraft capabilities. Witnesses described it as hovering motionless over the basilica before making rapid, impossible maneuvers and disappearing from view. The sighting occurred during peak tourist hours, ensuring multiple witnesses and photographic evidence. What makes this sighting particularly intriguing is the Vatican's complete silence about the incident. Despite the public nature of the sighting and the availability of video evidence, Vatican officials made no statements, conducted no investigations, and offered no explanations. This silence is particularly notable given the Vatican's usual practice of addressing unusual events that occur on its property. The rapid disappearance of the story from mainstream media has fueled speculation about a deliberate cover-up. Some researchers suggest that the Vatican has agreements with media outlets to suppress UFO-related stories, while others believe that the sighting was so sensitive that it warranted immediate information control. The timing of the sighting is also significant. It occurred during a period when the Vatican was becoming more open about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, with Vatican astronomers making public statements about the theological implications of discovering alien life. Some theorists suggest that the sighting was a deliberate contact event, possibly coordinated with Vatican officials. The incident raises profound questions about the Vatican's relationship with unexplained phenomena. If the Church possesses advanced knowledge about extraterrestrial visitation, as some theories suggest, the 2007 sighting might represent a public demonstration of ongoing contact rather than a random encounter. The Lost Gospel, Hidden Truths about Jesus. A 6th century Syriac manuscript has emerged that presents a radically different version of Jesus' life, portraying him as married to Mary Magdalene and suggesting that she was his co-savior rather than simply a follower. This lost gospel contradicts fundamental Catholic doctrine about Jesus' celibacy and the nature of his ministry. The manuscript, written in Aramaic, presents Mary Magdalene not as a reformed prostitute, but as Jesus' wife and equal partner in his spiritual mission. According to this text, Jesus and Mary Magdalene had children together, and their bloodline continued after the crucifixion. The document suggests that Mary Magdalene played a far more central role in early Christianity than the canonical Gospels indicate. The implications of this alternative gospel are revolutionary. If authentic, it would fundamentally challenge the Catholic Church's teachings about Jesus' nature, the role of women in Christianity, and the structure of early Christian communities. The text presents Jesus as a fully human figure who experienced marriage and family life, contradicting the Church's emphasis on his divine nature and celibate lifestyle. The manuscript also suggests that early Christian communities were more egalitarian than traditionally believed, with women playing leadership roles that were later suppressed by male-dominated church hierarchy. This alternative history would explain why so many early Christian texts featuring prominent female figures were excluded from the biblical canon. The Vatican's response to the Lost Gospel has been notably cautious. Rather than dismissing the manuscript outright, church officials have emphasized the need for careful, scholarly analysis while maintaining that such texts do not alter established doctrine. This measured response suggests that the Vatican takes the manuscript seriously, even if they reject its theological implications. The existence of such alternative gospels raises questions about what other texts might be hidden in the Vatican's archives. If the Church possesses other documents that contradict established doctrine, their suppression would represent a systematic effort to control religious understanding and maintain institutional power. The highest crime rate in the world, statistics, and secrets. Vatican City holds the dubious distinction of having the highest crime rate in the world, with approximately 1.5 crimes per resident annually. While this statistic sounds alarming, it reveals more about the unique nature of Vatican City than about any particular danger to visitors or residents. The inflated crime rate results from the Vatican's unique demographics. With only 801,000 permanent residents, but over 18 million tourists annually, the ratio of crimes to residents becomes artificially high. Most crimes are petty theft, pickpocketing, and tourist-related offences committed by visitors rather than residents. However, the Vatican's crime statistics also include more serious offences that rarely receive public attention. Financial crimes, including money laundering and tax evasion, have been significant problems for the Vatican Bank. The institution has faced numerous investigations and scandals related to its financial practices, including connections to organised crime and political corruption. The Vatican's judicial system operates under unique conditions that make crime reporting and prosecution complex. As a sovereign state, the Vatican has its own laws, courts, and enforcement mechanisms. However, the small size of the jurisdiction and the diplomatic status of many residents create complications in criminal proceedings. Some of the most serious crimes associated with the Vatican never appear in official statistics because they involve matters of canon law rather than civil law. Cases of clerical sexual abuse, financial impropriety, and administrative corruption are often handled through internal church processes rather than criminal courts. The Vatican's secrecy about its internal affairs makes it difficult to assess the true extent of criminal activity within its walls. The institution's practice of handling sensitive matters privately means that many incidents never become public knowledge, potentially hiding more serious problems behind the facade of petty tourist crimes. The mystery of the pine cone and the pineal gland, ancient symbols of consciousness. In the Vatican's courtyard of the pine cone stands a massive 13-foot bronze sculpture that has puzzled visitors for centuries. This ancient Roman fountain piece, with its perfect resemblance to the human brain's pineal gland, raises profound questions about the connection between ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience. The pine cone has been a symbol of enlightenment and consciousness across numerous cultures throughout history. Ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and even pre-Columbian civilizations used pine cone imagery in their religious and spiritual practices. The symbol appears in art, architecture, and religious texts as a representation of the third eye or higher consciousness. The pineal gland, often called the seat of the soul by philosophers like René Descartes, is a small endocrine gland in the brain that produces melatonin and has been associated with spiritual experiences and consciousness. The gland's pine cone-like shape creates an uncanny resemblance to the Vatican sculpture, suggesting that ancient peoples may have possessed knowledge about brain anatomy that modern science has only recently rediscovered. The placement of this pagan symbol at the heart of the Vatican raises questions about the Church's relationship with ancient wisdom traditions. The pine cone's association with consciousness and enlightenment seems to contradict traditional Christian teachings about the source of spiritual knowledge. Why would the Vatican preserve and display such a prominent pagan symbol? Some researchers suggest that the pine cone represents hidden knowledge that the Vatican has preserved from ancient mystery schools and esoteric traditions. The Church may have incorporated these symbols as a way of maintaining continuity with pre-Christian spiritual traditions while adapting them to Christian theology. The symbolism becomes even more intriguing when considered alongside other ancient symbols prominently displayed in the Vatican. The combination of Egyptian obelisks, Roman pine cones, and Christian imagery suggests a synthesis of spiritual traditions that may reflect deeper truths about human consciousness and spiritual development. The small cap and the forgotten goddess, pagan traditions in clerical dress. The zucchetto, the small round cap worn by Catholic clergy, bears a striking resemblance to the caps worn by ancient Roman priests of the goddess Cybele. This connection suggests that Christian clerical dress may have been influenced by, or deliberately adopted from, pagan religious traditions that the Church officially rejected. Cybele, known as the Great Mother or Mother of the Gods, was one of the most important deities in the Roman Empire before Christianity's rise. Her priests, known as Galli, wore distinctive round caps as part of their religious attire. The similarity between these ancient caps and the modern zucchetto is too precise to be coincidental. The adoption of pagan religious symbols and practices by the early Christian Church was a common strategy for converting pagans to Christianity. By incorporating familiar symbols and rituals into Christian practice, the Church made the transition to the new religion less jarring for converts. However, this practice also meant that pagan elements became permanently embedded in Christian tradition. The zucchetto's connection to Cybele worship raises questions about what other pagan elements may have been incorporated into Christian practice. If the Church was willing to adopt the distinctive headwear of pagan priests, what other symbols, rituals, or beliefs might have been similarly absorbed? The goddess Cybele was associated with fertility, nature, and female power, concepts that directly contradict the Catholic Church's emphasis on celibacy, spiritual transcendence, and male authority. The irony of Catholic priests wearing caps associated with a powerful female deity creates a fascinating contradiction at the heart of Christian symbolism. This hidden connection to pagan traditions suggests that the Vatican may be preserving ancient knowledge and symbols that predate Christianity. The Church's willingness to incorporate these elements, even while officially rejecting their original meanings, demonstrates a complex relationship with pre-Christian spiritual traditions. The pointed hat and traces of the Babylonian fish god, ancient Mesopotamian influences. The papal mitre, with its distinctive pointed shape, bears an uncanny resemblance to the fish head hats worn by ancient Babylonian priests of the god Dagon. This connection suggests that one of the most recognizable symbols of papal authority may have its roots in ancient Mesopotamian fish god worship. Dagon was a deity associated with fertility, agriculture, and the sea, worshipped throughout the ancient Near East. Babylonian priests wore ceremonial hats shaped like fish heads to honor this half-human, half-fish deity. The pointed shape of these hats, with their distinctive forward-facing opening, closely resembles the design of the modern papal mitre. The biblical context makes this connection particularly significant. Dagon is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as a deity defeated by the Hebrew god, making the adoption of Dagon-inspired regalia by Christian leaders theologically problematic. The Book of Samuel describes how the Ark of the Covenant caused Dagon's statue to fall and break, symbolizing the Hebrew god's victory over pagan deities. The evolution of the papal mitre from ancient fish god worship to Christian ceremony represents a fascinating example of religious syncretism. The early church's adoption of pagan symbols and practices was often a practical necessity for converting polytheistic populations, but it also meant that pre-Christian elements became permanently embedded in Christian tradition. The mitre's fish-like appearance takes on additional meaning when considered alongside Jesus' identification with fish symbolism. The early Christian fish symbol, ichthys, and Jesus' calling of fishermen as apostles create a complex web of aquatic imagery that may connect to much older religious traditions. This hidden connection to Babylonian religion raises questions about the extent to which ancient Mesopotamian influences shaped early Christianity. If the papal mitre derives from Dagon worship, what other elements of Christian practice might have similar pagan origins? Easter and the memory of a forgotten spring goddess. Pagan festivals in Christian celebration. The Christian celebration of Easter, despite its central importance to the faith, is deeply rooted in the worship of Eostre, an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility. The very name Easter derives from this pagan deity, and many of the holiday's most beloved symbols, eggs, rabbits, and spring flowers, have nothing to do with Jesus' resurrection. Eostre was celebrated at the spring equinox, when day and night are equal and the natural world awakens from winter's dormancy. Her worship involved fertility rituals, the decoration of eggs, symbols of new life, and the honouring of rabbits, symbols of fertility and reproduction. These celebrations marked the renewal of life and the promise of abundance in the coming growing season. The timing of Easter, determined by lunar and solar cycles rather than a fixed date, reflects its pagan origins. The holiday occurs on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox, a calculation that has more to do with ancient astronomical observations than with Christian theology. This complex dating system preserves the original pagan festival's connection to natural cycles. The fusion of Christian resurrection symbolism with pagan spring fertility celebrations created a powerful hybrid holiday that appealed to both Christian converts and those still attached to traditional celebrations. The Church's adoption of Easter timing and symbols made the transition to Christianity easier for pagan populations, while preserving ancient traditions under new religious meanings. The Vatican's embrace of Easter's pagan elements demonstrates the Church's pragmatic approach to religious conversion. Rather than completely rejecting pre-Christian traditions, the Church absorbed and reinterpreted them, creating a Christianity that incorporated rather than eliminated existing cultural practices. This pattern of absorption and reinterpretation can be seen throughout Christian history, from the timing of Christmas to the symbolism of various saints' days. The Church's willingness to incorporate pagan elements suggests a complex relationship with pre-Christian wisdom and an understanding that successful religious conversion required cultural continuity rather than complete rupture. From the forbidden grimoires hidden in secret vaults to the ancient pagan symbols adorning the very heart of Christendom, the Vatican's secrets paint a picture of an institution far more complex and mysterious than its public image suggests. We've journeyed through underground cities of the dead, examined evidence of extraterrestrial contact, and uncovered the hidden pagan origins of Christian traditions. These revelations challenge our understanding of religious history, scientific knowledge, and the very nature of truth itself. Whether it's the mysterious death of Pope John Paul I, the alleged time machine that witnessed Christ's crucifixion, or the Egyptian obelisk that stands watch over St. Peter's Square, each secret adds another layer to the Vatican's enigmatic legacy. The questions raised by these discoveries are profound. What other truths lie buried in the Vatican's deepest vaults? How much of human history has been shaped by knowledge that remains hidden from public view? And what would happen if these secrets were finally revealed to the world? The Vatican's silence on these matters only deepens the mystery. In an age where information wants to be free, the Church's continued secrecy suggests that some truths are considered too dangerous, too revolutionary, or too world-changing to share with humanity. What secrets do you think the Vatican is still hiding? Share your theories in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, and save our next video where we'll uncover even more ancient mysteries that history refuses to explain. Until then, sweet dreams, fellow guardians of human wisdom.